Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Friday morning by Derek Brown and by Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, it's the Week 5 Key Questions show. We'll be running through the biggest questions of the week in fantasy, breaking down some of these matchups in what looks like a pretty fun Week 5 slate. Let's get some quick thoughts on Thursday Night Football from last night. Fun game, but D-Bro maybe didn't pan out the way you were hoping with some of your bets.
Oh, no. It was a horrible night for prop betting. Like, everybody hit the line, couldn't hit the overs, but can we say any concerns for Drake London were a little bit premature? If you wanted the Drake London arrival game as a wide receiver one rest of season, we got it, dude. I mean, he was fantastic last night.
Fitz, was this the Drake London game, or was it the Darnell Mooney game, or was it the Kirk Cousins game, given their stat lines?
Yeah, man, I was below consensus with my ranking of Drake London, but above my consensus, or above the consensus on my ranking of Darnell Mooney. So I guess it evened out. But yeah, man, I was down in the dumps after the Brewers wrote another sad chapter in their tortured playoff history. But the finish to that game sort of lifted my spirits a little bit. That was the fun Thursday night game we needed.
Fitz, we have a alliance this week about not talking about playoff baseball, given the way our teams perform. So we're not going to reference anything else in regards to that. Yeah, the other, obviously, like I said, Kirk Cousins, 500 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Drake London, D-Ro mentioned, Darnell Mooney was really good. Kyle Pitts, relative to what he's been this year, 7 catches, 88 yards. That's maybe some signs of life. So we'll see how that looks moving forward. Very, very fun game. Rachaad White, 10 for 72 on the other side. Baker Mayfield, just 180 yards with 3 touchdowns, no picks. And Mike Evans did what he does in the end zone a couple of times. He is amazing. Just a quick reminder for everyone that all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros will help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. All right, guys, let's jump into question number 1. I wanted to start with the game that we have in London this week. It's hard to believe we are already not only at the byes, by the way, but we are also at the London games. It's Jets at Vikings this week to kick things off across the pond. Braelon Allen has outplayed Breece Hall in back-to-back games. Probably too early to overreact to that small sample size, but at what point is it no longer too early? Allen is clearly an elite backup and handcuff option, but is he also a fantasy starter even when Hall is healthy, Fitz?
I don't think he is, Worm. I know it's been a rough start for Breece Hall so far, 3.1 yards per carry, but hey, man, it's going to be fine. Breece Hall is he's 23. He's already put together a very compelling body of work. So Breece Hall investors should just chill out, do some yoga, pour a stiff drink, whatever it takes to relax. He is not suddenly losing it. He's going to be fine. Look, I love Braelon Allen. I mean, he's a Wisconsin Badger and a lot of fun to watch, but I think he still basically just has handcuff value at this point, not standalone value. As good as he's looked, he is averaging 8.6 half-point PPR fantasy points per game, and that average is being propped up by an 18.6-point game in week 2. His point totals in the other 3 games, 2.2, 8.3, 5.1, and that's with Braelon Allen running really well. Like, for Allen to be fantasy relevant on just 8 to 10 touches a game, he would need to get the high leverage touches, namely goal line carries and pass receptions. He's not really getting many of either. He has 7 receptions, and he has only had 1 red zone carry this season. You said it, Worm. Braelon Allen, he is an elite backup, but I don't think he's anything more than that, right now at least.
D-Bro, what do you think?
I'll echo every single thing that Fitzy said. Elite handcuff, not getting the red zone snaps. Like even last week when Hall put up a very disappointing stat line, he still had an 83% snap rate in the red zone. The thing that I do want to highlight here, Worm, is yes, I know people are freaking out about Breece Hall. If you can, right now, put out feelers for him in every single league. And this is what I'm going to tell everybody. He has a league-winning stretch run schedule. It is sickening how good it is. I just pulled it up. From week 10 on, these are the run defenses he faces, people. Arizona, Indy, Seattle. Any of those scare you? Okay, let's add on Miami. Jacksonville's a little bit tough. Then in playoff time, he gets the Rams and the Bills in week 16 and week 17. That is beyond juicy. So I'm not only preaching patience with Breece Hall, go out and trade for him today. This offense has nowhere to go but up. They trade for Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers looks better. This offensive line has nowhere to go but up. They are legitimately the worst offensive line in the NFL, generating not even 1 yard before contact per attempt for Breece Hall. You throw in the schedule, people need to go test the waters and trade for him everywhere they can.
So you basically answered the question I was going to ask, which is I'm participating in Fantasy Pros is doing a guillotine league this year for the first time. And Breece Hall, his team was cut last week and he's now available or was, going into waivers this week. And he went for over $500 out of $1,000 budget. And I was going to ask if you guys thought that was acceptable, which it would be in a vacuum when you're looking at where he was in draft season versus compared to what we've seen. Debra, it sounds like you think that was, more than fair.
More than fair, and I probably would even have gone above that, considering if you're able to ride it out, he's got the type of schedule that brings you home to the finish line.
Yeah, I was the one to get Breece Hall, by the way. I was the only person to bid over 500, and only one other person was even over 400, which I was surprised by.
Quiet flex becomes a loud flex. I like it, man.
I just was surprised by it, honestly. So I wanted to get your opinion on it because I was like, a month ago, we were like, this guy might be the number 1 overall pick in drafts. And,
kudos for getting him for 50%. I would have gone like 60 or 65. So shout out to you. Just quickly on Allen, Debra, I forget, where did you have him when you were doing your rookie rankings for the season? And has what we've seen this year adjusted that? Because Fitz and I did a Dynasty Discord stages earlier this week, and we talked about how Braelon Allen for Fitz is like a top 15, I think maybe even top 12 Dynasty running back in his eyes, just given the age and the performance we've seen early, even sharing that backfield with Hall. So I'm trying to remember where you had him, Debra. I had him lower only because as a prospect, it wasn't the fact that I didn't like his talent. It's the Braelon Allen we saw, and Fitzy can chime in on this too as well. The Braelon Allen we saw in college and the Braelon Allen we're seeing in the NFL, I think, are not absolutely 180 different players. His running style has changed, though. He is being more physical. He is getting downhill. He is using his size and his strength, I think, better than anything what he put up on film in college. There was so many times in college where you would see Braelon Allen either get into the open field or trying to string multiple moves together to break tackles or to get to daylight. And you're like, dude, you're not a 5'10", 205 like guy who is going to basically juke people out of their shoes. You're giant. You're huge. Run people over. Use your size. Get downhill. Use your acceleration. We've seen that more in the NFL. So, I mean, I've come around on Braelon Allen because the Braelon Allen that I saw in college, I was hoping to see more of those things in the NFL. But Fitzy, like, have you seen a change in his running style?
Yeah, that everything you just mentioned, and he looks faster. I know some of these guys go through speed training to get ready for the combine and their pro days, and it seems like whatever Braelon Allen might have picked up in speed training has stuck because he looks a lot faster than he did in Madison.
Yeah, I agree. A lot faster.
Let's go to Browns at Commanders. The Commanders have been the best offense in football, especially the last couple of weeks. The Browns, were a really stout defense last year, still, a strong defense in general, or at least a defense we expect to be pretty good. Can Cleveland slow down Washington, or are the Commanders players still basically all elite, high-level fantasy options this week, Debra?
I think you're looking at high-end fantasy options. Like you're starting Jayden Daniels. I mean, he's the QB2 in total point, or excuse me, maybe the QB1 in total points now. So you're starting him regardless of the matchup. It does not matter. I think he's proven enough, and he should have proven enough in everybody's eyes. But to the other guys, I mean, we don't know if Brian Robinson Jr. plays this week, but Austin Ekeler should be back. And if he's out there floating on waivers, if somebody dropped him, or if you got him on your team, he's worth playing this week. He is going to be what I think is going to be the lead back. If Brian Robinson Jr. is out, you have a Browns run defense that's allowed the 7th highest explosive run rate, the 2nd highest yards after contact per attempt. So Austin Ekeler, and we know he's going to play in the passing game, so I don't think you're going to see a lot of Jeremy McNichols. So I wouldn't be chasing that if I was anybody in leagues, especially deeper formats. So, but the other guy that I do want to bring up here, because you did highlight the secondary, Worm, Terry McLaurin. We give a ton of crap to Cliff Kingsbury, and some of it rightfully so, about not moving wide receivers around the formation. Cliff, this week, baby, you do you, okay? That I don't want to see. I do not want to see McLaurin moving around the formation, because where he lines up and the fact that the Browns corners are static, they play sides. This is going to allow Terry McLaurin to face, and I'm going to say this with a grain of salt, the weak link in the Cleveland Browns secondary is Martin Emerson Jr. Terry McLaurin is going to line up basically almost the entire part of the game, 77% of his routes, against Martin Emerson Jr., who has allowed a 65% catch rate and a 120.4 passer rating in his coverage. So while a lot of people could look at the matchup and say, I'm kind of down on Terry McLaurin, I'm not. I think that he can have a fantastic game, because Emerson has been the one corner, if you want to point to anybody in this Browns secondary where passing attacks have kind of picked on a little bit this year. Yeah, Terry McLaurin could still have a massive game here.
Fitz, what do you think? I mean, the Commanders' offense has been again, this last couple of weeks, so fun. They've punted like once across 3 weeks. They're really excelling at I liked Jayden Daniels. They are excelling at a level that I am blown away by here for the first month of his career. Do you expect it to continue here against Cleveland?
Yeah, Commanders punter Tress Way gets about as much exercise as I do on an NFL Sunday, which isn't too much. Yeah, this is going to be a fun test for Jayden Daniels, because the Commanders have so far faced the Cardinals, Bengals, and Giants, all of whom are bottom 12 in defensive DVOA, and the Buccaneers, who we just saw give up 5,000 passing yards to Kirk Cousins. So now they do get Cleveland, the stiffest defensive test they've faced. The Browns aren't that great in defensive DVOA either. I think they're bottom half, but they have given up 5.0 yards per play, which is top 10. It's a good defense. And still, though, I mean, you're playing Jayden Daniels. I don't have a greatly diminished outlook for what Daniels is going to do against a real defense. I think he's going to do well. Terry McLaurin, as Debro pointed out, you're playing him. Brian Robinson Jr., if he plays, and if not, I agree with Debro. Austin Ekeler, fire him up. We'll see some Jeremy McNichols if Robinson doesn't play, but Ekeler would absolutely become at least flex worthy, if not RB2.
By the way, Fitz, this isn't one of our key questions, but just on the other side of this game quickly, Amari Cooper, is he going to take advantage of this terrible Commanders secondary?
I think so. Debro doesn't think so. I bet the over on him on DraftKings at 49.5 yards yesterday. And I know the home road splits are always bad with him, or at least have been since he joined the Browns. But man, this is Washington can't cover anyone. And the Browns are getting their starting tackles back. It looks like Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin. That's going to help a lot. Maybe give Deshaun Watson a little more time. I know Watson hasn't been good. I can't spin anything that way, but maybe he's a little bit better with improved pass protection.
Debro, quickly, I saw you kind of shaking your head, so you disagree.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree about Cooper being good. The only thing that worries me about it is the coverage matchup, because we've seen Washington run a lot of too high. This is what got Marvin Harrison Jr. and what I wrote up in the primer is that what teams do versus single high and versus too high, and Cooper's target share has dropped. He's still getting fed a bunch of volume. So maybe that doesn't hold this week considering the matchup, but if they hold tight considering the coverage matchup, I'm not as high on Cooper, but I am higher on Jerry Jeudy versus too high. We've seen his yards per route run go up, his first read share bump to 23.3%. So while Fitz and I are a little bit on the opposite sides as far as which Browns wide receiver goes off, I think one of them does. I just think it's Jeudy and not Cooper.
Let's go to Ravens at Bengals. Lots of really enticing matchups in this one. I didn't want to kind of highlight a specific player. I just wanted to get your guys' opinion. on kind of the strength on weakness that we're getting on both sides of the ball. We get the Ravens rushing attack against the Bengals rush defense. That is a huge advantage for the Ravens. But we also get the Bengals passing attack against the Ravens passing defense, which so far this season looks like a big advantage to Cincinnati. So Fitz, which of those do you expect a bigger day out of, the Ravens rushing game or the Bengals passing game?
So I don't think your Ravens have that bad a pass defense, Worm. I know they've given up a lot of yards so far, but that was kind of skewed by the Dallas game. They are like 19th in opponent passer rating, below average, but not terrible. The Bengals run defense, on the other hand, gave up 120 rushing yards and a touchdown to Ramondre Stevenson in week 1. Gave up 90 rushing yards to Isaiah Pacheco in week 2. Gave up touchdown runs to Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Ekeler, and Jayden Daniels in week 3, and gave up 104 rushing yards and a touchdown to Chuba Hubbard in week 4. Derrick Henry is going to steamroll this defense.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree that Derrick Henry is going to steamroll this defense. The thing I'll say about the Ravens pass defense is I think they're better, and there was some discussion about this in some like the national media shows this week, coming off of that Bills performance, where I think they're better suited for a defense like the Bills, where there's a lot of options, but maybe not that one alpha in the passing game. I worry about the current state of their secondary, their ability to slow down an alpha, like the way we saw Rashee Rice playing before he got hurt in that week 1 game, against the Chiefs. He came out firing, the way we saw Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers even kind of destroy them in week 2. The only alpha level receiver that hasn't torched the Ravens this year is CeeDee Lamb. And even I think that was more, he had a bad game than the Ravens did some, any kind of special defense to slow him down. So the Bengals have alphas, right? They have Jamar Chase, who is as alpha as it gets, and they have T. Higgins, who's now back on the field. So that is what very specifically worries me. It's not that I think the secondary is bad. I just don't know that it's suited to slow down like an elite receiver, which, by the way, is very difficult for most defenses to do. So that's more my concern in terms of looking at that particular matchup. But I totally agree that like on the other side, like I just don't see any way the Bengals can stop Derrick Henry. It's his 3rd straight great matchup against a terrible running defense, and I'm expecting to see similar to what we saw in weeks 3 and 4. Debro, how are you looking at this one?
You're not stopping the Derrick Henry train. He's going to carry dudes with him into the 2nd and 3rd level of the defense. I mean, He's been awesome to watch this year. It's been so much fun, man. He's 4th in explosive run rate, and I don't think that's going down this week, man. So I agree with you that. And as far as the Baltimore pass defense, I think what's very telling is they've switched around their corner alignments and what they've been doing on the back end. Kyle Hamilton has objectively been bad as far as a slot coverage guy. So they took him off of that last week or the week before, maybe. Put Marlon Humphrey back into the slot, put Nate Wiggins on the outside, which has really helped them. So I think you continue to see that. Although I do kind of question, are they going to move it back, considering, are you worried about Andre Yoshivas beating you in the slot? Probably not. So I do think we probably see Humphrey go back to the boundary this week. So I do think that Baltimore's secondary is better than what they've shown so far this year. But if I got to talk about like strength versus strength, ain't nobody stopping Derrick Henry, man. Nobody.
Yeah, Debra, our prediction of 15 touchdowns this year that we talked about all summer, it looks conservative at this point. I mean,
the over 10.5 at plus money. How many rushing touchdowns does he have right now?
I think he's got 5 already, and just narrowly missed a 6th with that touchdown.
You love to see it.
Yeah, this matchup is so good that when I was looking at our expert consensus rankings, the half PPR rankings, I did a double take that he wasn't RB1. He's RB2, and he's only behind Jordan Mason, which is totally fair. But I was like, I think
I have him at RB1 for the week. Yeah, I got him at RB1 for the week.
I mean, I would have him at RB1. Again, I think it's reasonable to have a guy like Mason ahead of him, but very, very appealing matchup here for Derrick Henry. Yet again, I think he's going to get a TD, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you call a touchdown. One thing's for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or defense, We don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown, or betting on something simple, or how many touchdowns will be in the game. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Week 5 has some standout games. While I'm interested in Jets Vikings in London, like we already talked about, Minnesota laying 2.5 points. Ravens Bengals. Ravens are also laying 2.5 points. The clear best game on the slate, and the next one we'll be talking about, is Bills Texans. Houston is laying just a single point in that one, with the total set at 47.5. That game could be an instant classic if Josh Allen and CJ Stroud are at their best. Lines and odds subject to change on those matchups, of course. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Guys, let's get into that awesome Bills at Texans matchup. Buffalo obviously got the doors blown off them on Sunday night in Baltimore. Debro is still reeling from getting that one wrong. It did just seem like a bad matchup that just kind of got out of hand early on. But I have to ask, and Debro, we'll start with you. Are there any concerns whatsoever with the Bills after that one?
Not really. I mean, again, I think it was things got away from them very, very quick. I mean, dude, when the game opens and Derrick Henry breaks off an 87-yard run on the
it was
first
87,
play
longest in Ravens history.
Play of the game, you already know things are maybe going to go sideways here. So I think it was just a game that got away from the Buffalo Bills. I'm not worried about Josh Allen. I'm not worried about a lot of parts of this passing attack or the offense just in general, outside of I don't know if Khalil Shakir plays this week, but again, if you're in deeper formats, probably a good week to fire up Curtis Samuel then.
Fitz, same question. I don't really think there's any concerns with Buffalo, but you kind of have to ask after a shellacking like that. Are there any concerns, or was it just a bad matchup?
Here's one. I think if you're a Bills fan, do the Bills have enough pass catching firepower to play from behind if they need to? I mean, they've got, I like Khalil Shakir quite a bit. Dalton Kincaid, very good pass catching tight end, not really an explosive playmaker, but very good. Who else? Keon Coleman, work in progress. Curtis Samuel, nice little Swiss Army knife, but not really a guy who's going to make plays downfield for you. Mac Hollins, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's my question with this team, because when it gets to be important games down the stretch, playoff games, who do they turn to if they go down 10 points, 14 points?
It's a good point. It's a really good point. It all sounds great and groovy about, we're just going to find the open player, and until you get into those moments, and it's a great point, Fitzy, where it's like, okay, who's my go-to? Who's the alpha that I lean on when the chips are down to get open, to win the matchups, to be the go-to receiver? Well, they don't have that anymore.
Do you guys have a lean on betting this one? I mean, like I said, it's just a 1-point spread, and 47.5 is the total. It started at 46.5 and then went up on DraftKings. Do you guys have a particular play you like?
I'm not putting my money on it, but in a couple of pools I'm in where I'm required to make a pick, I'm taking the Texans.
Yeah, I think I'll take the Texans. I think the spread is right. If anything, I'd probably take the Texans and take the under if I'm forced to bet this game. I think that you're more likely to see, if Buffalo is down Shakir, and again, their offense kind of sputters again this week. We know Buffalo's defense is good. I think the under is probably the way that I most likely play this.
Let's go to an AFC East divisional matchup. Dolphins at Patriots. At least some of us thought that the high-level Dolphins players were somewhat QB-proof for fantasy. Guys like Tyreek Hill, Mane Chan. Do we maybe need to rethink that after what we saw in Week 4 and start considering sitting? Again, it's really hard to sit a guy like Tyreek Hill, but do we need to seriously consider it, at least, these Miami players, until the quarterback situation improves, Fitz?
Oh, man. It's not that I thought they were necessarily bad QB-proof. I did think they would be bad QB resistant, and so far not so resistant. Maybe it's a mistake, but I still have Achane and Tyreek Hill ranked as starters. Achane is my RB14. Tyreek is my wide receiver 21. The floor has crumbled for both of these guys, though. Like the floor before, we used to think maybe it was 5 or 6 points. Now it's like 1, 2, 3. But Achane and Tyreek, and to a lesser extent, Jalen Waddle too, are still incredibly talented players with home run speed. It hasn't happened yet, but even with a bad quarterback, eventually someone's going to hit on a big play. Like maybe the Dolphins can spring a couple of big plays this week against the Patriots. But yes, it's been pretty bleak so far.
There's an old Canadian sitcom called Corner Gas that I used to love watching when I was younger. And in it, these small town cops, they save money. And instead of getting bulletproof vests, they get bullet resistant vests. And that is, it makes me think of that when you talk about them being quarterback resistant in Miami. In the scene, the partner who like finds out about this is like, this shirt is wrinkle resistant. It's got a lot of wrinkles. So maybe not the smartest thing from them. Debra, what do you think? QB proof, QB resistant, QB you don't care? How are you approaching the Dolphins players?
I'm fine with sitting everybody on Miami right now. It depends on what your options are. I've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both as wide receiver 3s right now. I've got Waddle actually ranked ahead of Tyreek. I think he's going to get shadowed by Christian Gonzalez. That is a real thing. Plus, looking at the coverage matchup, I kind of liked Waddle a little bit more anyway. I've got Devon Achane as RB18 right now. It's been tough, man. And I think the other thing that, like, it's not just the quarterback stuff. The other thing that I guess we're not talking about enough, too, is the fact that Miami's offensive line is not playing well. Devon Achane, as crazy as it sounds, is not breaking tackles right now. Not even close to, like, not even at a good level, but not even at a level to where he was even like sniffing the same area code as last year, where he's like, it's not just like, okay, well, some baked in regression. He's been one of the low end, and I kept like writing him up as a must start guy because of the volume and the role and all these kind of things and the talent. Right now to this point, like his tackle breaking metrics are pretty bad. The offensive line is playing bad. I mean, this is just, it's sad to say right now, like not full on like an offense to avoid, but I don't have any qualms with sitting anybody in this offense right now. It really just comes down to like, who are you debating starting Waddle, Tyreek Hill, or Devon Achane against?
Let's go to Panthers at Bears. We heard, rumblings about Roschon Johnson going to be getting more opportunity in the Bears backfield. Ended up being DeAndre Swift, who had the huge game in week 4. Now they get a tasty matchup against the Panthers run defense. Are we going to rank either Roschon or Swift aggressively relative to consensus against a very porous Carolina rush defense, Debra?
I mean, where's he at in consensus, Worm?
16.
Okay, so I'm right with consensus. I think our running back just kind of falls off a cliff whenever you get past like the top 12, maybe 13 guys this week.
Just to be clear, that is Swift at 16. Roschon is at 32.
Yeah, I've got Swift right now at RB15. I think a mid RB2 is appropriate. And the thing I want to highlight with Swift is my bigger takeaway of last week was not so much like, oh, Swift is awesome and we're all wrong. Like, okay, fine. He had a 25% missed tackle rate last week. He still only had 1.5 yards to contact per attempt. That's basement level. Like, it's not good. I think the bigger takeaway from last week was, if you have a running back with a heartbeat, freaking start them against the Rams this year. They are a bottom 3 run defense. So while like we all could sit here and talk about, oh, we're so wrong, and DeAndre Swift just needed a kick in the butt. Bro, he got one of the best run defenses, if not the best run defense in the NFL. That is the get right elixir for everybody. He has another really good matchup this week. Probably gets the volume because he played really good last week against a terrible run defense. But if anything, trade away DeAndre Swift off your teams. Like, I'm totally fine still making that move, even though Roschon Johnson's role didn't change at all. This offensive line is still bad. Swift is still not amazing. Just start everybody versus the Rams.
Fitz, what do you think about in this particular matchup against the Panthers?
Yeah, my takeaway from that Swift game against the Rams last week was that the Rams are really missing Aaron Donald, because there was that 33-yard touchdowns run by DeAndre Swift where the middle of the Rams line parted like the Red Sea. And I was thinking, That wouldn't have happened if Aaron Donald were still there.
This is why Fitz is one of the most accurate rankers in fantasy, with hot takes like the Rams miss Aaron Donald.
Hey, man.
So I have
real.
DeAndre Swift ranked RB20, so I guess I'm below consensus on him. It's under most circumstances, yes, you're starting him, and the outlook is pretty good against a defense that has given up the second most rushing yards to running backs and the second most touchdown runs to running backs. But I am hesitant to embrace a running game that has only been functional in one of its 4 games so far. The Bears are graded 26th by PFF in run blocking. Swift had 30 or fewer rushing yards in each of his first 3 games. He was RB 42 in a half-point PPR fantasy scoring going into week 4, which put him 1 spot behind Ty Johnson of the Bills. Now he's up to RB 24. So yeah, I'm wary. Like I don't know if the Chicago running game is fixed yet, or if the Rams defense is just so broken that it could even make the Bears running game look good. So yes, the Panthers run defense is in disarray too. Losing Derek Brown on a defense that was already bad. And who else did they lose? They lost someone at running back. Was it Mason? Yeah. So this is a shabby run defense, and maybe Swift has another big game, but man, I'm like not totally buying into a Chicago rushing renaissance.
So you guys mostly focus on Swift, which is fine. What are you doing with Roschon this week? He's ranked RB 32 in consensus and half PPR, and he's in a range with a lot of number 2 running backs in their backfield. In this stretch, it's Braelon Allen, Joe Mixon, who's there because of injury, Tyler Algier, Roschon Johnson, Justice Hill, Antonio Gibson, Alexander Madison. That's RB 29 through RB 35. Roschon's right in the middle of that. Again, Mixon's the only one who's not in RB 2, and obviously he's only there because of injury stuff. So do we like him better than those backups? Obviously, Algier already played, but do we like him better than those backups? Do we think that's in a fair range for him? Are we considering starting him? Or is it more the Bears' rush attack has been so bad that we don't care so much about the matchup, D-Bro?
His role didn't change that much. I mean, outside, again, the touchdown last week, he was... the touchdown saved him. Outside of that, if he didn't get the touchdown, we probably wouldn't be ranking Roschon Johnson even as an RB3. So, I would start Tank Bigsby over him. I got Justice Hill over him. I got Chase Brown in a terrible matchup over him. I think he's RB3 worthy just because of the matchup, and maybe he sucks out and gets another touchdown. But the other point, that goes with everything Fitzy was saying, this offensive line for Chicago is still dreadful. Before last week, weeks 1 through 3, the only offensive line that created fewer adjusted yards before contact per attempt was the damn Jets. They are second worst. So this offensive line is horrible. So it's tough for me to invest in a guy who's rolled it and changed. He got there based off of a touchdown. Maybe doesn't even get the red zone work this week, considering what Swift did last week. So I'm okay with Roschon, but do I think that he deserves definitively to be an RB3 or is a really strong flex play? Probably not. If we get word that Zamir White's going to be banged up and maybe limited, I'll probably move Madison above him. I'll probably move a few other guys like Ekeler, depending on the B-Rob news, is going to go above him. So, yeah, he's okay, but you're really touchdown hunting if you're playing Roschon.
Fitz?
Yeah, I think I've got him ahead of guys such as Braelon Allen and Tank Bigsby because of matchup. And I guess the encouraging thing, if you are faced with starting Roschon Johnson, is that Khalil Herbert has been totally aced out of the picture for the Bears now. So, you're not excited about starting him. But if you have a hero RB build and your hero is Saquon Barkley and he's on bye, you might have very little choice.
When I think about my favorite fall activities, there are plenty of fun adventures on the list, but right at the top every fall is going to football games live. Some of my all-time favorite memories watching the Ravens have come right inside M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, cheering along with thousands of fellow Ravens fans in prime time. And I'll be checking off another NFL stadium from my list later this year when the Ravens head to Cleveland. I'll be going to that game along with a handful of our Fantasy Pros colleagues. I cannot wait for that trip later this month. And when we order our tickets, we'll be using Gametime. They've got a new feature called Gametime Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The list of my favorite features on the Gametime app is too long to read everything, but here are some standouts for me personally. I love the Gametime Picks curation, obviously, especially since I can use it for not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I also love the all-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. There's nothing in the world more infuriating to me than thinking I know what I'm about to spend on a purchase, then getting hit with a surprise fee at the last second. That doesn't happen with Gametime. Plus, I also appreciate the seat views to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you commit to buying. The customer service is excellent as well. Their support team has helped me out on more than one occasion buying last-minute tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Guys, let's go to Cardinals at 49ers. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals passing game didn't quite have the huge blow up we maybe expected against a terrible Commanders defense in week 4. I'm not saying we are panicking, but scale of 1 to 10, what is the panic level on Arizona's offense after that somewhat disappointing performance, Fitz?
Maybe a 6. The needle isn't into the red yet, but it's past the halfway point. Kyler has really only had one good game this season, and it was against our friends, the Rams. And you would have thought he would have put up better numbers against the Lions and Commanders, who do not exactly have airtight pass defenses. Didn't happen. So maybe Trey McBride's return from a concussion this week helps. But McBride only missed one of those 3 lackluster games that Kyler had. And if Kyler can't get it going, it's obviously going to hurt Marvin Harrison Jr., McBride, maybe even James Conner, because they're not going to be scoring as many points or getting, the nice long sustained drives you want to see. Although so far Conner looks like a good investment. 200-yard games, 3 touchdowns. No worries there so far. But yeah, I'm a little worried about how Kyler has played so far.
What do you think, Debra?
Yeah, I talked about this out on X the other day. Kyler Stans kind of came for me and said that I was trolling them and stuff. I was just like, look, I'm just presenting facts, man. Like, Kyler's not been good for most of the season. Outside of the Rams, Kyler Murray, outside of the Rams week, is averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game. You take away the massive Rams game, and that would be good for QB 24 in the season. And I'm not usually, it's 4 games, let's take away his best game. Bro, yeah, okay. He's had other opportunities versus beatable secondaries, and he's looked very pedestrian. That it's a fact, okay? Like, even if you take away just, fantasy scoring in general, outside of 37 qualifying quarterbacks, 21st in yards per attempt. He has the 14th highest off-target rate. So he's not accurate. He's not playing well. The rushing's not even saving him. I'm not saying it's full-blown bells and whistles and panic mode and all these kind of things. Like, he's got some get-right matchups over the next few weeks. Like, I'm sorry, cover your ears, Fitzy, but he gets the Packers next week, and their secondary is not amazing. So maybe that's a get-right game, or maybe that's just a huge James Conner week. But yeah, I'm kind of worried about Kyler. I think a lot of people are just automatically thinking, okay, well, plug and play. QB1, fire him up. Let's go. And I'm like, there's a lot of other guys in that QB1 realm that you might be a little bit better off playing than Kyler Murray.
Can you put a number to it, 1 to 10, panic level?
He looks terrible again this week. It's going to be about a 7.5. I'm at about a 6.5 right now.
I think that's fair. Speaking of the Packers, let's go to our next key question. We know Jayden Reed is good. How much do we like the other guys, though? Dontayvion Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, with Jordan Love back, and also no Christian Watson. Fitz, I'll start with you as the Packers guy.
Yeah, we like all of them against the Rams. Mm-hmm. It's the Rams. This seems to be a running theme of this show. Dontayvion Wicks led all NFL receivers in air yards last week with 200. Tucker Kraft, 6 for 53 and a touchdown. Romeo Doubs hasn't given us a big game yet, but would it surprise anyone if he had a 7-catch, 100-yard game against this Rams defense? Probably not. The Rams are 31st in DVOA against the pass. They've given up, or are giving up, a league-high 9.1 yards per pass attempt. No one else giving up more than 8.5. And their opponent passer rating is 122.7, which means that pretty much everyone they face, every quarterback, looks like a mashup of Dan Marino, Joe Montana, and Tom Brady. So, yeah, I mean, like, I think it's going to be a good game. Of course, some of the stats from last week are skewed because the Packers dug themselves a 28-0 hole and had to throw like crazy to try to catch up. But still, man, like, against the Rams defense, all these guys look like attractive fantasy plays for week 5.
We're ranking Wicks ahead of Dubs, right? Like, well ahead.
Yeah.
Debro, I know that you have been a big Tucker Kraft fan for a while, so I want to get your thoughts on him. Also, the receivers and just how aggressively we're ranking all of these guys this week.
Said it when they drafted him, man. When they drafted Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, I said this is the Hayden Hurst to Mark Andrews situation, and Tucker Kraft is Mark Andrews, not Hayden Hurst. Yeah, love him, man. The fact that he's continued to ball out, I think it's very telling, and I love it when coaching staffs, when they throw draft capital and stuff out the window and they say, look, you're the better player. You're playing better, so you're the starter. And that's what Tucker Kraft has done. He proved himself last year. He's a top 12 tight end for me rest of season and this week. It's basically this week is start every Packer that you got, man. I'm extremely high on Dontayvion Wicks. Like, I've got him as a top 24 wide receiver. Maybe I'm over the moon with him, but like, I think this game is going to absolutely shoot out. You have two defenses on both sides that can allow points and production. I think this is a huge get because we haven't seen a massive game from Josh Jacobs yet. Did you just see what DeAndre Swift did to this run defense? Josh Jacobs is going off this week, man. The only thing that keeps the wide receivers from going off is Jacobs having himself a freaking day.
Just to clarify, Debro, comparing Tucker Kraft to Mark Andrews, you meant that as a compliment to Kraft?
Oh, yes. Not
rude.
Oh, shots fired, baby, but true. Not 2024, not 2024 Mark Andrews. Every other year of Mark Andrews. Yes, to clarify.
Tucker Kraft is Mark Andrews, parentheses derogatory.
I do appreciate the clarification because it's needed, especially considering this year.
I'm starting Kraft over Andrews in a dynasty league this week. Although part of me is wondering if the Kyle Pitts breakout this week is a sign that maybe tight ends are coming back, and maybe I should get off Mark Andrews. Yeah, maybe they're going in the right direction. We'll see, I suppose. By the way, Jayden Reed inside the top 6 amongst wide receivers in consensus,
as he should be.
That's why we're not really mentioning him because that would, like I said, we know he's good and an obvious start. But yeah, this is a smash game for the Packers for sure. Before we get to the key question for Sunday night's Cowboys at Steelers matchup, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. Debro, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of Pittsburgh?
Oh, dude, that comes down to it's easy. The 101 for me is pierogies, dude. It's pierogies. I was very sad, and I'm going to throw this out here not only for Pittsburgh, but I'm staring at you, Canton. When we went to the Fantasy Football Expo, I was very sad when we went to the hotel and they had taken pierogies off of the menu. So I definitely got to get my fix. If I'm thinking about Pittsburgh, it's got to be pierogies, and it's either going to be from Pierogies Plus or Cop-Out pierogies. They're just fantastic, man.
Fitz, you mentioned pierogies as well when we were talking about this, but you've got another choice too.
Yeah, I mean, pierogies. I'm from Milwaukee, big Polish population. Pierogies. I'm all about the pierogies, but it is a void in my life that I've never had a Primanti Brothers sandwich with the like pastrami with the French fries and the coleslaw right on the sandwich. Like, I am all about that. I need to fix that and get myself the Primanti Brothers, or have Uber Eats deliver me Primanti Brothers from Pittsburgh.
I have had Primanti Brothers before. I've been to a couple of Pirates games in Pittsburgh, just going up to see the coolest baseball stadium, and I've gotten Primanti Brothers when up there. It is good. It is good. I'm not going to say it's the all-time greatest sandwich I've ever had, but it was very good, and I would definitely recommend it. I am going to protest the fact that we didn't start this until the week after the Ravens were hosting Sunday Night Football and say that last week it would have been crab cakes for me. You guys already picked the good Pittsburgh one, so I will look backwards and say in week 4, if we were already doing this for Uber Eats, I would have highlighted
get the crab cake mention in
Baltimore.
There.
I can't start off with a Pittsburgh one. We're 1 week away from a Baltimore one.
No, it was coming.
So there you have it. Our Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. We got pierogies. We got Primanti Brothers. Last week, it would have been crab cakes. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. All right. In this matchup, an interesting matchup for Sunday Night Football. Justin Fields typically does run more. It feels like as the season goes along, he's now coming off his best game of the year, 2 rushing touchdowns in that one. How high are we ranking him this week against the Cowboys? Or do we think it's the Steelers running back room, namely Najee Harris, who will take advantage of this Cowboys run defense? Debro.
I've got Justin Fields at QB6 right now. I think the conversation for him starts at QB5. I mean, he's just however we want to slice this, guys. He's going to run. Dallas is not going to be able to bring pressure. Their entire pass rush is basically gone right now. Fantastic single high matchup for George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. So whether he's going to run, he's going to throw the ball. It's a fantastic, or he's going to sit in the pocket and then just carve up a very, I'm not going to say overrated, but this is not the secondary we thought we were getting, or at least to the skill level and shutdown potential entering the 2024 season. Yeah, so all things Fields for me this week, man.
Fitz, what do you think? Where are you ranking Fields?
I have Fields QB7, but I would not have any complaint with him being at QB5 or QB6. I have Najee Harris ranked running back 17. It is a good setup for both guys. And Debro talked about it with no Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence for the Cowboys. Their pass rush has just been wiped out. Probably no Jaylen Warren or Cordero Patterson for the Steelers. So it's pretty much going to be the Najee show for the Pittsburgh running game. How exactly is it going to look, Worm? That I cannot tell you. You are asking me to light a lantern and crawl around inside the headspace of Arthur Smith. And I don't know what I'm going to find. Cave drawings of a game plan that has a bunch of manufactured touches for Darnell Washington and Calvin Austin III. Do not make me go spelunking down there, Worm. So I don't know how it's going to look, but Justin Fields and Najee Harris are both attractive plays.
I didn't think we were going to get to spelunking in Arthur Smith's cranium. That is, I do love the idea. You want a mental image? That is one hell of one.
I do love the idea that his playbook is like drawn on caves.
that was fantastic. Finger painting.
You have to know hieroglyphics to read his playbook. Awesome. All right, let's go to the last question on the slate here. Saints at Chiefs, Monday Night Football. Who is it? This is an easy one. Who is it that will step up in Rashee Rice's absence? We saw Travis Kelce last week, after Rice went down, 7 catches, 89 yards, his best game of the season. So it will be Travis Kelce. Will it be Xavier Worthy, highly touted rookie, had some explosive plays? Or is it door number 3? Is it someone else, whether it's a running back, whether it's a lesser known receiver, whether it's anybody, whether maybe the answer is nobody steps up in his absence. How are you approaching this without Rashee Rice, Debro?
It's going to be Travis Kelce. He's a security blanket. He's going to be the number one option for the Chiefs offense. So, I mean, you're also facing a New Orleans Saints defense that's given up the 7th most receiving yards to tight ends. So I think Kelce's going to be the go-to. And I'm really kind of curious how much of the yards after catch stuff that Xavier Worthy picks up and what that role looks like. Like, I think Kelce probably rolls into that Rashee Rice role. But I'm wondering because Xavier Worthy was quietly a really good run after the catch guy in Texas, like top 20 in multiple different seasons in yak per reception. So I think he picks up part of that. But the number one guy for Mahomes is going to be Kelce moving forward, especially in this matchup.
Fitz, do you agree? Or are you still thinking that, maybe kind of in the long term, they might still want to save Kelce to a degree for January, and it ends up being Worthy or someone else? By the way, Rice is officially on IR. As of the time we're taping this, no announcement about, long term, like if this was truly an ACL or out for the season or anything, but he is on IR officially.
Yeah, so Debro covered it pretty well. Like, I don't think you can spare Kelce with the situation they're in right now. And Debro, I think, covered it pretty well for week 5. But long term, Worm, you mentioned door number 3. I think you have to at least knock on door number 3 for the long term, which maybe is considering a trade. Like, we saw Kelce step up last week. But how can you lean on a 35-year-old tight end this hard for a full season? And by the way, Travis Kelce, 36 on Saturday. Happy birthday, Travis Kelce. But this has to be so frustrating for Chiefs GM Brett Veach. They won the title last year, even though they were seriously undermanned at the wide receiver position. And Veach goes out and signs Hollywood Brown, drafts Xavier Worthy in the first round. Hollywood has a season-ending injury, never plays. Worthy, nice addition, but he hasn't had more than 5 touches in any game this year. Like, I don't know if he's cut out to get 10 or 11 targets every week. Like, he is more seasoning than main ingredient. Then you lose a guy who was a main ingredient, Rashee Rice. I mean, if Patrick Mahomes is the steak in this offense, Rashee Rice was the mashed potatoes. Who is going to step up with Rice out? Like Justin Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore. Like, they're just not appealing options here. So still some optimism that the Rice injury isn't a serious, like really long-term thing, maybe 4 to 6 if they're lucky. But don't you think Veach is at least making some calls these days? And I know there's been talk about the Chiefs reacquiring Tyreek Hill. I don't think that's going to happen because of the financial commitment Miami still has with him. But what about Deontay Johnson, who is on a 1-year deal with the Panthers, a team that is not going to the playoffs and could really use draft picks?
I was gonna ask, Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins. Is he your favorite?
Yeah, I just think he makes the most sense as far as what, like a guy who could be a high volume pass catcher right away and a team that simply isn't going anywhere and doesn't need him.
Debro, do you have kind of a top choice that you'd like to see them add?
I'm going to shout out Joe on this one, and I hate to do that, but I'm going to do that because I'm not going to take credit for this. But Keenan Allen makes so much sense on both different sides. Like, the Bears aren't going any, like, okay, fine. If you want to say the Bears are going anywhere or not this year, they don't need Keenan Allen to definitively, prove or disprove the evaluation of Caleb Williams. You still have DJ Moore. You still have Rome Odunze. I think Keenan Allen is still only on that 1-year deal. Like, he makes so much sense for Kansas City, and a player that, like, they know him quite well. They've played him in multiple years, and he fits that Rashee Rice. Like, he could play outside, could play inside, the versatility, giving open, and being a guy that is a trusted veteran. Like, Keenan Allen makes the most sense to me.
It makes sense as a fit. It would be weird. I know it's a business and he's already not in LA anymore. It would be weird after seeing him with the Chargers for so long to see him in Chiefs red, but dude, it's the nature of the NFL.
I would love to see Keenan Allen get a ring. Talk about a guy who's been on so many up and down teams that deserves to enjoy the fruits of winning. Like, Keenan Allen getting a ring, dude. Well, I'd be all in for that.
Neither of you guys mentioned, and maybe there's reasons for it, particularly the fact that they're in division, but the big name on the trade block right now is Devontae Adams. I mean,
I don't see it happening.
In division, money. The Raiders and the Chiefs.
The Raiders just going to refuse.
Yeah, I mean, in division, money.
I get why, but
I don't see it happening.
All right. Well,
I think Devontae is Jets or bust, baby. I think that's where he's at.
Yeah. We'll wrap up there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Best of luck in your Week 5 matchups. Hopefully it goes better than Debro's prop bets did on Thursday Night Football. For Debro and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.